Hey, folks, welcome to the show. Glad you could join me here this time around. Hope everybody's having a pleasant Friday evening, afternoon, late night, whatever time it is, wherever you happen to be. Glad you could be here with me. Um, as usual, I will be starting the show by responding to questions that were submitted ahead of time by my wonderful patrons and channel members. So if you are with us in the live chat, and hi, people in the live chat talking about J.K. Rowling. That's always nice. If you have something you want me to see in the live chat, something you want to ask, or something you want to talk about, or if you're going to be generous and throw in a super chat or something, please hold on to those until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I will be able to spend my full attention on the live chat for the rest of the show. And also, don't forget, after I get done the patron and member questions, I'm going to show you a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. And it's a really short one this time. So just for the heads up, it's really short, but it's good. I'm quite pleased with it. So anyway, with all that out of the way, let's start with the patron and member questions. And the first one comes from Manuel, who says, probably asked a million times already, but what did you do before focusing on YouTube, podcasts, and all the other stuff you do nowadays? Thanks for all the content. I actually, the only long-term real job I've ever had, and I don't think I've been asked a million times, but I've talked about it a few times before over the years. I worked maintenance at a truck stop here in Hagerstown, where I'm from and where I live. And I worked that job for about 5 years. And then I went to college. I did not go to college right out of uh, high school. I didn't actually start college until I was about 25. Um, and it was during my time in college that I discovered first blogging and then transferred from blogging into making YouTube videos. And the channel kind of took off. And by the time I was done with college, it was a viable income source, and here we are. So yeah, I was a custodian, I was a janitor, I was a maintenance worker at a truck stop for several years before the YouTube thing came along. So there you go. That's what I did. That was my quote unquote real job, my last real job. um Michael Hanneline says, Steve, have you ever written or attempted a novel before? While I've written short stories and articles that have been professionally published, finishing a novel has eluded me for decades despite multiple earnest attempts. However, I think I'm really going to finish one now, thanks to finally medicating my dysthymia and ADHD. Writing is weirdly easier when your goddamn brain isn't working against you. My novel's a low fantasy neo noir murder mystery set in an alternate 1947 Los Angeles where legends from books have been made real. Kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but instead of a hard boiled detective dealing with cartoon characters, it's werewolves, vampires, retro robots, retro space aliens, Frankenstein's mobsters, not a typo, and more stuck in 1940s LA. I've really been enjoying writing it. If you haven't written a novel, what kind of a novel would you write if you did write one? Fun trivia. Did you know Philip Marlowe was inspired by Lancelot of Arthurian legend? I did not know that. And I have never written a novel or seriously tried to write one or seriously considered writing one. If I did write one, it would probably be just the standard, literary, semi autobiographical, novel. Like, it would not be a genre novel. It wouldn't be like a fantasy or you know, anything like that. It would be pretty straightforward literary fiction. I've had a few ideas here and there for stuff. Um, some of which I think I even wrote down a while ago, but nothing that I have seriously actually gotten into and considered actually writing it. But no, if I uh, other than like if I'm doing fan fiction or doing something for the channel, my actual sort of prose writing is all there's no genre stuff. It's pretty straightforward fiction. Sometimes with a comic sensibility or a comedic sensibility, but no genre stuff. I wouldn't be any good at that or have much of an interest in writing that. But no, never tried. Never tried. Kier, Prophet and Lace, but with Rom instead of Quark. A few episodes later, Rom realizes he misses being a woman and felt more like himself during the episode. Season 7 has her wife and son supportive. Quark eventually comes around and by the end of the season says, "My sister is an idiot," affectionately. I really like that. That's a really good idea. You would, of course, run into the problem, which wouldn't have been perceived as much of a problem by the general public back then when the show was in production as it would be today. But you would have the problem where you would, I mean, unless the plan was to just recast Rom at a certain point, you would have the problem of Max Grodenchik, a cis male actor, having to play a trans woman at some point, which is not ideal, no matter how seriously and sensitively that project is undertaken. That'll always be kind of a problem. But other than that issue, I think that could have been an interesting direction to go with Rom. Yeah. I mean, I never saw any indications of him in the show that made me think that he could have or should have gone that way. But I mean, it's fiction and they make it all up as they go along. So they could have gone that direction with Rom, I suppose. And I think if it had been done well, then it could have been a very satisfying addition to Rom's character arc. Yeah, I think it's an idea with some potential. Duwan. So Steve, which character arc are you most looking forward to? I want to see more Seven of Mine and Raffi. I assume you're talking about Picard season 3. I think it's adorable that you assume there will be character arcs. I feel like let's set a nice low baseline so that the show, let's set goals that the show might realistically be able to achieve. And after season 2, I think expecting the characters to have character arcs is a little, the expectation is a little too high. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking forward to, I guess, I don't know, seeing Worf. Just because I have some lingering affection for Worf. Like, I'm not, as I think people who watch my Star Trek videos regularly know, like, I'm just not the kind of fan that is satisfied with, oh, look, I got to see my people. Oh, look, I saw the character I like. Like, that doesn't impress me, Oh my God, it's so and so. I don't care unless it's part of a good story. So, I'm not really looking forward. I wouldn't say I'm looking forward to any of the show. I am anticipating it with morbid curiosity at this point, and no small amount of trepidation. I'm not looking forward to anything in it right now. That may change after I start watching it. I haven't watched the first episode yet, but after I start watching it, it may grow on me, and there may be parts of it that I am looking forward to. But as of right now, having not seen any of it and having seen the previous season, not looking forward to any of it. Matt L., in response to your Hogwarts Legacy video, I consider myself an ally, but also love Harry Potter. I believe I've asked about separating art from the artist, R.E. Kevin Spacey, and you seem to say that it's a valid viewpoint. My question is, what's the difference? JKR is a horrible bigot, yeah, but HP is good in spite of her views. In regards to your how hard is it to not buy, I'll accept that and respond about TOS. Shatner was apparently a bigot to George. Roddenberry also said some super questionable views about women, yet I see you reacting to Star Trek content. Do you ever buy TOS merch or stream after you found out that Shatner was a bigot? Are you not giving him a percentage of the royalty too? In my view, the devs who actually worked on the game did nothing wrong. If JKR has personally worked on the game, I'd understand, but it's effectively a license agreement. I'm buying the game used, or I'm donating to the Trevor Project if I get it new. Am I horribly off base here? What are your thoughts? I wouldn't say you're horribly off base, but I think a lot of the responses I've seen to my video and to other people's statements about the Harry Potter game, and why trans people are saying that if you want to be an ally to us, you should really consider not buying this game. And a lot of the responses from people who are sort of pushing back, they say things like, well, um, like she's already got her money, it's a licensing agreement, she's already been paid, or she didn't personally work on the game or anything like that. And I don't really think that's the point. The point of asking people not to buy the game and not to support the Harry Potter franchise with, new money going forward. The point isn't to starve J.K. Rowling. The point isn't to keep money out of her pocket so that she will eventually, not be rich anymore. Like, that's not the point. The point is, when the Harry Potter franchise does well from this point forward, whether it's a new movie or a new TV series or a new book or a video game or whatever, the ongoing success of the franchise, and especially of new things that come out in the franchise, empowers her and continues to elevate her and give her a status in popular culture that she then uses and weaponizes to harm trans people specifically. And so I don't think that really applies to any of the other examples that you use of other problematic creators like Shatner or Kevin Spacey or that sort of thing. She uses her platform, and I think a lot of people commented on my video. I don't follow her personally all that closely, so I don't know every single thing she has said or done in an attempt to justify herself of late. But I had a bunch of people commenting on my video saying that she actually takes the success of new projects under the Harry Potter umbrella as an endorsement of and a validation of her views and of her many, many statements against trans people. So that's what people are trying to stop or to limit when they say don't buy the game. It's not directly to say, let's keep J.K. Rowling from personally financially profiting from it. It's because if the game is a success and other Harry Potter stuff is a success, then it props her up culturally and politically, and it continues to make her an important person who has a megaphone that can be heard by a lot of people. That's the point. And then she uses that megaphone to hurt marginalized people. That's the point, not necessarily, keeping her from getting her royalties. Tony Bowling, of all the shows, I view Strange New Worlds as close to the original series. I don't have a feel on your opinion on this show, so what's your opinion? I love it. I guess you didn't see my episode reviews when season 1 was coming out last year, but I love Strange New Worlds. I think it's fantastic. I think it's by far the best new Star Trek thing that has been made, like, under the current regime. And I like Discovery. Like, I'm not someone who has like hated all the new stuff until Strange New Worlds. I thought I've had problems with Discovery. I've given sort of mixed reviews to Discovery, but man, when Discovery is on, when Discovery gets a hit, it hits a home run. Like, when it's good, it's really good. It's just that it's really uneven. But I've enjoyed a lot of Discovery. I loved Star Trek Prodigy. I thought it was terrific. And I love Strange New Worlds. And I think of the three new Star Trek projects that I have liked the most, which would be Discovery and Prodigy and Strange New Worlds, Strange New Worlds is way out in front. Like, it had a damn near perfect first season. I mean, and in terms of like whether or not it was a good or a bad episode, I think it was a perfect first season. I think all 10 episodes were good episodes, and a few of them were downright great episodes. So I think Strange New Worlds is terrific. And specifically, is it close to the original series? I mean, in certain ways it is. It's the original series interpreted through a more modern lens. It's the original series, but in the more contemporary style. And as I've said, I think it works splendidly. I think it's fantastic. I think it's the best Star Trek show currently being made, and one of the best. Just judging it just on its first season, like one of the best Star Trek shows they've ever made. So I'm a huge fan of Strange New Worlds. A suitably chagrined Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, I can't stay mad at you. After a major breakthrough in therapy and in accordance with that court order, I now recognize that taste in music is personal and subjective, and that liking Phil Collins doesn't necessarily make someone a bad person. And I feel bad about the whole Buster Kincaid bit. That was really uncalled for under any circumstance. So if you would accept my sincere and heartfelt apology, I'd like to put this whole ugly chapter behind us so we can get back to cracking on Star Trek Picard Season 3. And I promise not to poke the bear by making any gratuitous Kenny Loggins or Huey Lewis and the News references. So, we good? Yeah, we're good. We're good. I think we're out of the danger zone now, and you have managed to keep the fire of our friendship burning bright. And anytime you want to hang out, you can feel free to come on over and we'll just consider it a night of playing with the boys. I couldn't think of any Huey Lewis references off the top of my head, but I've got Kenny Loggins locked and loaded. Black Cover 95. I've come to realize that my favorite gag on Steve and Stuffy is when Steve, in a moment of oblivious self-centeredness, casually undercuts Stuffy's autonomy. See Steve and Stuffy Stroll Down Memory Lane and Steve and Stuffy and the Wacky Misunderstanding. While I reflect on what this says about my character, I was hoping to convince you to use more of that gag in your future episodes. I have some ideas if you're interested. I'm not exactly sure what gag you're talking about. I mean, Steve's oblivious self-centeredness is one of my favorite parts of that version of myself to write and to play. So like I get the oblivious self-centeredness. It's a core component of that character, of that version of me. And I I have a ball with it. But uh casually undercutting Stuffy's autonomy. That could mean a couple of different things. I know there have been times when Steve in the show has just sort of dismissed Stuffy or talked down to him in a way that was probably unintentional on Steve's part because, as you say, he's kind of oblivious sometimes. But I don't know specifically what you mean, and I didn't have a chance to go back and watch those episodes or read the scripts for those episodes before the show, so I'm not sure, and I don't have an encyclopedic recall of everything that happened, so I don't know exactly what gag you're talking about. But Steve's oblivious self-centeredness is something that will will always be a part of the character because I love writing it and I love playing it. And there are notes like that in some of the upcoming YouTube shorts with Stuffy. There's not anything like that in the one I'm going to show tonight, but in some of the other ones that I shot recently, there are some notes like that. So, and I hope you will enjoy them. Jim Baker says, "Do you know what the term wunderkind means, Wesley? It's a word reserved for those of us who achieve early in life." Dr. Paul Stubbs, "History is full of those whom we would consider to be prodigies or geniuses. There was Mozart, Da Vinci, and I am convinced Nikola Tesla was a time traveler who got stuck back in the 19th century. Michael Jordan belongs on this list, as does Tiger Woods, and some would argue Jimi Hendrix. I would like to submit for your amazement and enjoyment Tina Setkick for your consideration to this category. Known simply as Tina S on YouTube, she was discovered at the age of 8, and by the age of 17, she produced this, which is a link to a video, full disclosure, I did not watch. It's a cover on the electric guitar of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata Third Movement. Who makes your list of impressive and talented people who have earned your respect?" I mean, in terms of like wonderkins and in terms of like child prodigies and whatnot, I mean, it's the first name that comes to mind of recent vintage is Bo Burnham. I mean, that guy is just proven himself over and over again to be just a brilliant comic and writer and performer. And he started on YouTube as well and has been doing it since he was a teenager. And he's just, you know, he's fantastic. Like he's so he has an extremely enviable level of talent and poise and wit, and I'm a big admirer of his. Um, and yeah, that's the only name I can come up with off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean there are a lot of people who the really impressive people are the ones who show a precocious amount of talent at a very young age, and then they manage to hold on and prove themselves, like into adulthood and become like enduring artists or athletes or whatever, like Tiger Woods. I remember when Tiger Woods first started, and it was like, oh, he's like a teenager and he's playing better than all the adults, and now he's here, we are 25 years later, and I do not give a single shit about golf. I've never watched an actual golf game in my entire life, but I appreciate when an athlete is able to completely dominate their sport, and Tiger Woods has done that, for a very, very long time, has proven that he wasn't just, a, a child prodigy, but has, endured into adulthood as well. So I think that is what really impresses me when they have the longevity like that. Agent Meister, who can't see you if you don't move. Peldor Joy, Steve, consider the DS9 episode Defiant. Are you considering it? There's a scene between Chief O'Brien and Thomas Riker, whom we all believe to be Will Riker at this stage. O'Brien greets him like the old friend he perceives him to be, but Riker replies with, "I have nothing to say to you, O'Brien. I think you know why." Riker walks off, leaving Miles standing there like he just got a slap in the face. I watched this episode again recently and racked my brain as I can't put my finger on why Tom Riker would treat O'Brien this way. And I can't find any reference to this interaction on Memory Alpha. They didn't meet in the TNG episode Tom Riker first appeared in. Could it be that O'Brien taking a stand against Captain Maxwell in the TNG episode The Wounded, resulting in the saving of Cardassian lives, rubbed Tom Riker up the wrong way? I know you have forgotten more about DS9 than I'll ever know, so maybe you can shed some light on this interesting little wrinkle. Okay, so as far as I know, it has never been definitively explained, and it is a topic of much discussion among Star Trek fans and specifically Deep Space Nine fans. I have my own theory about it. And my theory is, and for a long time, I wasn't sure about it either. Like for a long time, I wasn't sure what that was supposed to mean, or if I was missing something either in that episode or in some past episode. My theory right now is that Tom treats O'Brien that way to get rid of him, because Tom is planning on hijacking the Defiant. And he knows he's already going to have to deal with Kira, and he figures, well, he can take care of Kira, the way he does by just zapping her with a phaser. But he wouldn't want to have Kira and O'Brien on the ship and have to take care of both of them. And maybe he was worried about that because Will Riker and O'Brien are old buddies from the Enterprise, and O'Brien, thinking that Tom is Will, might see Commander Riker, hey, a long time no see, and want to like hang out or catch up or tag along on the Defiant when Kira takes him on the tour or whatever. And Tom just wants to avoid that. He wants to get O'Brien out of there. So he treats him very coldly and in a way that he probably expects O'Brien will find confusing, but it's just to get rid of him, without explicitly telling him, to get lost. So that's my theory. And again, I don't know of anything specifically like from one of the writers or anyone involved in the actual episode that was the idea. But that is my interpretation of it, that it's Tom as Will, just trying to get O'Brien to leave him alone so he can steal the Defiant. Danny K. Hey, Steve, what is your favorite thing that Rom has ever said on Deep Space Nine? And what would it sound like if Stuffy said it? Thanks. Hope all is well. Well, if I'm saying it as Rom, it will sound exactly like that if Stuffy says it, because my as we have established, and as Dana and I established in our video from this past Monday about Profit and Lace, my Stuffy and my Rom are like right there. They're very close. So my favorite thing that Rom ever said is in the episode, I think it's Dr. Bashir, I presume. And it's when Rom is trying to get up the courage to ask Lita out on a date. And he finally is able to approach her. And he says to her something like, like, hi, Lita. And Lita says, hi, Rom, did you have something you wanted to say to me? And Rom's like, yes. And then he freezes and he just stares at her for like a few seconds in just complete silent stillness. And then he just goes, bye, and turns into and just walks away. He can't do it. So that's one of my, if not my favorite Rom moment of the entire series. Just bye. I love Rom. He's hilarious. He's wonderful. Some random geek who will mention Joanna and Phoenix needs help. And Steve, I know you are not a gamer, but you have been to a GameStop before, as you told me. There is the Wizards game I want to mention. There is this Wizards game I want to mention. It is an RPG. You play as student magic users trying to get to the bottom of a conspiracy plaguing the magic school. And it is gay as all hell. There are no cishet characters in the main cast. Your party members' pronouns are in their status screen, cute art style, plenty of accessibility options, including content warnings, detail to the point of mention of blood, but no depiction. Some warnings are as simple as self-hate. You have options to make the turn-based battles easier, and even an instant victory option. The game is called Eichenfell, only $20 on all major platforms. James Stephanie Sterling named it Game of the Year in 2020, one of only 5 games to claim that honor. And sales of it don't benefit a huge fascist supporting bigot. Should folks check out Eichenfell? There are plenty of RPGs with magic and wizards out there as well. I mean, it sounds like if you're a gamer and you're into that and you want to play like a wizard kind of game, it certainly strikes me as a much preferable option to the Hogwarts game. Yeah. So sure, people should check it out. Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for the suggestion. I think a couple people in the comments of my video mentioned it as well, but yeah. Thank you for suggesting Eichenfell. If you are someone who wants to play a wizard-oriented RPG video game, but you don't want to give money to the Harry Potter game and continue to prop up that whole franchise, then consider that. There you go. Thanks, Geek. Thanks for the suggestion. David Colby, I have a hot take. The hottest of all takes. Here it is. Lower Decks is when Star Trek is written like science fiction. Most of Star Trek is a character drama with social commentary wearing the makeup and costume of sci-fi. There's not a lot of exploration of the social ramifications of new technologies. Instead, technologies are retro-jacked onto the narrative to explain why a society is the way it is. We want a utopia and cannot imagine a utopia because we haven't actually read Marx, so we'll say replicators exist. Contrast this to Lower Decks, which takes the sci-fi premise of what if Star Trek was a place where people actually lived, and the answer is a farcical, nonsensical universe filled with nerds. And why do they know about Armus, Steve? They know about Armus because if they didn't know about Armus, they would be fucking murdered by the next godlike slime mold they ran into. Thus, Lower Decks is the only Star Trek that is sci-fi. Well, if they've known about Armus for so long, then how comes they couldn't think of a funny bit to do with him when they had him on the show? Hey, we should have Armus on the show. That's a fun reference people will remember. Okay, are we going to do anything funny with it? No. Let's just have them like prank call him and do a few seconds of like meandering, unfocused, quote unquote comedy where they're like, hey, Armus, your stuff's here. We're touching all your stuff. Like, what the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that Q cameo? In what, season 1? When Delancey, was he was voicing Q for like a few seconds, and the Q cameo in Lower Decks was Q for some reason dressed in his Encounter at Farpoint judge's robes and floating throne. You know, just in case anybody watching didn't get that it was Q. And he's flying through the ship like zapping people with his finger, you know, like Q used to do. Even the gratuitous pandering, cloying fan service gag didn't make any fucking sense. It was awful. You're gonna have Q on the show, fine. That's great. Have Q on your fucking show. Could you write something for him, please? Could you write a fucking funny bit for him to do? You want to do an Armus gag? I don't really get it since you're an animated show and you can literally do anything you want, but sure, fuck it. You want to have an Armus gag? Could you write some fucking jokes? Could you write a gag for Armus to be in that is funny and sounds like it wasn't just written on a napkin and then handed off to the animators 5 minutes before the fucking deadline? Could you maybe do that? You bring James Cromwell in to voice the hologram of Zephyr Cochrane in the ship at the amusement park in episode 1 of season 3. You can't write any fucking dialogue for him other than just have him say shit that he said in the movie so people can go, oh, he said the thing he said in the movie. You can't write any kind of a fucking gag for the hologram that might actually be funny. No, just have James Cromwell come in and we'll have him record lines he already fucking said in a movie everybody saw. Great idea. Great, solid comic writing. Good job. And great sci-fi writing, too. You're absolutely right. Solid as hell sci-fi. Great comedy, great sci-fi. I feel better. I feel good. I feel good about myself. Thomas James Wright, a.k.a. Black Body Economics. This has been a difficult week for us. Our beloved Professor Green passed away post-op at a local veterinary clinic Thursday, February 9th. We raised him and all of his siblings from birth and found amazing homes for 4 of them. They just turned 1 December 27th. I can't say too much because the vet made a poor decision turning this into a legal matter. A few askaways ago, I mentioned our plans to produce a Trek-like space adventure with our Frenchies. Professor was going to be the captain. I'd like to ask if you would give Professor Green a big shout out for living such an amazing and love-filled little life. As brief as it was fucking amazing. He was so curious and crazy smart, super cerebral for a dog. He had the cutest little fluffy ears. He was the best little buddy I could have ever hoped for. Rest easy, Prof. Here's his profile on our adoption site before we chose to keep him and 2 of his sisters. And there's the address right there, 7frenchies.com/puppies/Professor-Green. So if anybody wants to go check that out to see the puppy. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us. And of course, I'm only too happy to read that out and to give a shout out to Professor Green. Sounds like he was a wonderful dog. And I'm so sorry to hear about his loss. But I'm glad that he was with you. I'm glad that you got to have him for as long as he was around. And I'm sure you gave him a good life, although it was not as long as you would have hoped. And yeah, it sounds like you loved him very much and he loved you too. So I'm very sorry to hear about that, but I'm glad that he was there and that you chose to share him with us. Here's a question from General Contact Unit Problem Child. Embarrassing confession. This one time when I was around 19 to 21, I saw a late teenage girl on the bus and I thought she was cute. I covertly snapped a pic of her with my iPod Touch. Later that night, I looked at the pic and said to myself, dude, you did something really creepy today. And I never looked at the picture ever. Is it weird that as a socially reclusive young male, I was able to realize I'd done something bad after doing that? At the time, I thought I was weird and creepy for doing it. But since Me Too, I've wondered if it's actually more bizarre that I realized I'd done something wrong almost right away at that age. Like, is it actually the norm for young men to violate consent and assume it's okay? Well, I have no idea if it's the norm or not, but it is certainly, it's at least it seems to be a pervasive behavior. I can say I never did anything like that when I was that age or after that age, but I mean, I'm sure that I have said and had thoughts that, you know, I would be horribly, you know, embarrassed by if I were reminded of them today. And yeah, I mean, I think it probably is. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I don't want to say like, yeah, it probably is unusual for a dude your age to realize he had done something creepy and you know to correct himself that quickly. Maybe it's not. I don't know. All I know is there are a lot of people who do things like that with no guilt, or at least not with enough guilt to get them to stop doing it, or to change their behavior, or you know to come to view it in a way that would cause them not to do it anymore, or to delete the picture or whatever. um there are plenty of people that do that sort of thing and just never hold themselves to account for it, and you did. So I mean, is it usual, is it unusual, is it the norm, is it not? I don't know. I know that I'm sure there are many, many, many people in the world who would do what you did and not feel the least bit bad about it or the least bit creepy about it. You did it, and you recognized very soon that it was something that you wish you hadn't done and that you didn't want to do anymore. And I think you should be happy about that. You know, I think that's a good thing. I think that says something very good about you. Um, you know, as to whether or not it's normal or not, I don't know. I would hope there are more people like that than not, you know, but I don't know. I don't know. I will say, whether or not it's the norm in terms of people's behavior and in terms of people's beliefs, for many, many years, and even up to this day, young men specifically are sent the message culturally and socially that, at least in certain circumstances, that it is okay, or that at least it's not that bad, or it's understandable in some way, or it's excusable in some way. Like, those messages are sent. Whether or not the behavior and the belief is the norm, I don't know, but they are sent those messages. uh and that sucks, and that should stop. Isaiah Taylor, here's a movie pitch. The setting is North Florida in 1993, and it's the end of the Cold War. Military expenditures have been dramatically cut in Pensacola. Chemical weapons produced by a company contractor called Southern Chemicals are in the process of shipping their chemical weapons to Jacksonville to be dismantled. The train had several boxcars containing the chemicals splits open during the crash, and some of the chemicals spill on the ground near a centipede nest containing both centipedes and their eggs. The centipedes then mutate to eat human flesh. This is a movie film project that I'm working on this year. My movie borrows from B movies like 1995's Mosquito and 1993's Ticks, and I have started watching these films and taking notes on what to add to my film. What do you think of my pitch, Steve? Any suggestions? What would you like me to add to the story? Just saw Titanic 25th anniversary in IMAX with all my officer cosplays. You may have seen them on Facebook. I did. I think I saw some of those pics on Facebook. Yeah. It looks like you had a good time. As for your pitch, I think it's a great B movie creature feature pitch. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Um, I don't have any suggestions as far as like specific things that you should add. And you may have already gotten to this point as you're developing the pitch, but you need to figure out how the giant human flesh eating centipedes are going to die. You need to figure out like an easy to understand, preferably visual method that makes sense, you know, at least makes sense within the framework of your movie that you've established, within the world that you've established, for the heroes to kill the flesh-eating centipedes at the end. I presume that's the ending, unless you're setting up a sequel or something, or you're going to have some kind of George Romero zombie movie thing where it's like, oh no, the flesh-eating centipedes are here to stay, and now it's just about, you know, how do we live in the world with flesh-eating centipedes as a part of it. I mean, maybe that's the direction you're going, and that's fine, go for that. But if you're going for like a classic, like, you know, B movie creature feature, you got to have a way, like a, you know, an easy to understand way. Again, hopefully with a strong visual element that is easy to recognize for the audience, of how you're going to get rid of these centipedes at the end. So figure that out if you haven't figured that out already. Russell, hey Steve, how are you doing? I'm recovering from yet another surgery. I had 3 more hernias pop up. Hopefully, this is my last time dealing with this. Recovering isn't a lot of fun. So, today's question, which I hope is okay due to spoilers, but I was thinking after your last DS9 rewatch, I had asked you if you preferred The Visitor or In the Pale Moonlight, and without spoilers, you said yes. Now, while I can't honestly choose between the 2 episodes, I was wondering why that was. If anything, In the Pale Moonlight shows us consequences of a captain's actions, which to my knowledge is rare and gives us the hard look at his choices. Finally, I often wondered this. Do you think Voyager could have been a great show if they stayed with a DS9 format, meaning less episodic in nature? Okay, so first question, why do I prefer The Visitor to In the Pale Moonlight? It's right here. Not my shirt and not my sternum. It's because The Visitor touches my heart. And I will almost always, like, if 2 things are, presented to me and you say which one is your favorite, if one of them touches my heart, that's the one I'm going to pick. There are certainly ways in which In the Pale Moonlight is superior to The Visitor. All the things you say about it are true. It's definitely a more morally complex story than The Visitor. And I mean, the interactions between Sisko and Garrick are fantastic, and the compromises that the situation imposes on Sisko, and the things that he sort of dirties his hands with and gets involved with, and the compromises he has to make, and all of that. Like, it's all. I mean, In the Pale Moonlight is an amazing episode, but The Visitor hits me right here. The Visitor touches me emotionally, like in a very deep and moving way. So that's why I prefer The Visitor. And as for would Voyager have been better? Well, yes. Could it have been a great show if they had stayed with a Deep Space Nine format, meaning less episodic? I don't know. I mean, the short answer is yes. It could have been a much better show. It wouldn't necessarily have had to be more like Deep Space Nine in terms of being less episodic. Because let's not forget, Deep Space Nine is pretty episodic. Like, other than the final, I think maybe 7, 8, 9 episodes of the series, like there's a very tight sort of serialized storyline leading into the series finale at the end of season 7. And there are a couple of other stretches that are, very tightly serialized through multiple episodes. But for the most part, Deep Space Nine is just about as episodic as TNG was. The difference is that the characters grew and changed through the show. The characterization was sticky. Events of one episode affected the characters going forward, even if the episodes themselves were not closely linked in terms of their plot lines. Character arcs carried over, and characters grew and learned and changed as the series went forward. And that's what Voyager was missing. So it didn't necessarily need to be less episodic. It just needed to be more thoughtful and more disciplined in terms of its long-term characterization, because the premise of Voyager kind of cries out for that sort of thing. Voyager would have been fine as being an episodic show, which it was, but the premise of Voyager was, these people are lost in an unfamiliar part of the galaxy. They have limited resources. They can't just stop at a starbase and get repairs whenever something goes wrong. They have limits in terms of the number of people they have. And, their primary mission is sort of, we want to get home. So like there are just things built into the basic premise of the show that seem to suggest long-term characterization, growth and change and evolution from episode to episode. And that, for the most part, doesn't happen. So it would have needed that more so than a less episodic format, I think. Wolfie Basach, hi Steve. I was looking out of my flat yesterday, keeping a vigilant eye open for surveillance balloons, but sadly, there wasn't much to report. However, America is different, so I decided to ask about your views on the subject. It was a carefully pivoted and thought-provoking question, balanced, and even contained a gag about George Santos saving America in his homemade F-14. Anyway, I just finished when BBC Radio announced that they probably weren't surveillance balloons after all. Jesus bleeding shit sticks, I said out loud. That's an hour I won't get back. Now, although I appreciate that the BBC aren't legally obliged to contact me before they release news items that conflict with my personal convenience, it was still bloody irritating all the same. And so, my hastily rewritten question to you is, have you ever just finished something before a neighbor, boss, dog, or even a state-owned, politically non-biased, and globally respected broadcasting corporation decided to balls it up for you? Yes. I have had that experience many times when writing YouTube videos, and I have also had the even worse experience of having finished and uploaded a video that contains some comment or makes some reference or use of a recent or ongoing news event. And then after the video is done and uploaded, and there's no time, between now and the release date to fix it or to change it or to do something else, a new piece of information comes out, the story changes, additional reporting is brought to light, and it changes what I say in the video or makes what I say in the video less pertinent, less relevant, or there's a joke I make in the video that I know isn't going to land anymore or isn't going to land as well as I had hoped it would, or there's a question that I'm asking that will now have a definitive answer or will be shown to not be the best question to ask. So, something like that. That's happened to me a time or two before. So yes, I've had that experience, and I've also had the experience of it being in the process of writing something, and then as you describe happened to you when you're trying to write your question, you see something new on the news that changes the story or adds additional context or whatever, and you're looking at what you've just written thinking, well, I can't use that. I'm gonna have to fix it or do something else or whatever. Yes, I have had on more than one occasion that incredibly frustrating and also humbling experience. Yes. And I'm sorry that you had to have it. Joe McClory, saw your video on your fave TOS episode, and you said you were doing more. What are your least favorite episodes of each show? That's a good question. I am going to do those. I'm trying to sort of string together the retro reviews in little sort of informal series. So the first batch was all the pilot episodes of the Roddenberry and Berman era shows. And then this batch that I just started with the review of Amok Time is my favorite episodes from each series. And then I guess at some point I can do my least favorite as well. Maybe I'll do that batch next. I'm not sure. I haven't decided. But my least favorite episodes of each show. Picking my least favorite of classic Trek is tough. Because, there are some really lousy episodes. Like, there are some really lousy episodes of classic Trek. Turnabout Intruder is pretty rotten for a lot of reasons. Popular choice is Spock's Brain, which is also a rotten episode, but I enjoy Spock's Brain. I think it's sort of, it's gone into camp so bad it's good territory. Like I have no ill will towards it, but Turnabout Intruder is pretty rotten. So maybe that. Least favorite episode of TNG, probably Tin Man. I just don't think it's a very well written episode, and all of the actors in it just seem like they're miserable the entire time. And I don't know if they were or not. I don't know if they just come across that way or what, but Tin Man is a rotten episode. Least favorite episode of Deep Space Nine. We just did, Dana and I just did a special review of Prophet and Lace. That's probably pretty high on my list of least favorite DS9 episodes. All of the Loaxana Troy episodes are fucking garbage. I don't like any of the Loaxana Troy Deep Space Nine episodes. I can't decide which one of them is the worst. But they're all pretty terrible. So one of those or Profit and Lace. It's tough to pick. Voyager. Oh God, Voyager. Least favorite Voyager episode. I'll tell you the one that pissed me off enough to make me stop watching the show for a while was Year of Hell, because they did that 2-part story where they and it wasn't like it was a surprise, like, because nobody watching that episode should have expected any of that stuff to stick. You knew that at the end they were going to hit the reset button, but still, just the fact that they did it on that show where the main problem was a near total lack of characterization and change and growth and evolution, to do a whole bunch of it in one episode and then hit the reset button literally at the end of the episode and make it so that it never happened. So I was like, okay, I've just watched a 2-part episode of a TV show where at the end of the episode, the characters in the show don't even remember what happened to them, and nothing that happened had any effect on anything in the show. So it's the biggest waste of time of any Star Trek series I've ever seen. It's like, why did we watch this? None of this means anything to anybody in the show. Why did we watch this? So yeah, probably Year of Hell for Voyager. And for Enterprise, God, I mean, just out of pure spite, it would be the 2-parter where they explain why Klingons have smooth foreheads in TOS. It's probably not actually the worst episode they ever did, but it's not great. It's not good at all. It's a bad episode, and it's completely pointless it's spending 2 episodes to answer a question that did not need answered, and that nobody other than the most pedantic fans had ever even asked, expecting an answer seriously. So, just that on principle, that one. Sent Merc, hey Steve, I watched the Harley Quinn Valentine special and it got me thinking about Bane. He's a very, very big part in that special. I love the Harley Quinn version of Bane, yet he's a character that I think gets mistreated very often by adaptations and probably not taking this as seriously as he should be. I personally like the interpretation that Bane is the one villain Batman is afraid of, because he systematically took him apart and defeated him and just busted him in a way that none of his other villains have. He might fear what the Joker does to innocents, but Bane is the villain that he fears personally. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Bane, how he should be used, if he should be used at all, any stories you liked that included him, just general Bane talk. Well, in terms of adaptations and such, I think Bane is a great character to use. In terms of the ongoing monthly comics, I don't think he should be used, at least not anymore, because the secret to Bane, from where I sit, is it's not just that he's the villain Batman is afraid of. As you say, he's the villain who defeated Batman, who beat Batman at his own game, who not only beat him physically by breaking his back, but who outsmarted him, who outthought him, who proved himself superior to Batman intellectually as well as physically. So once you've done that, and then had Batman come back and beat that guy again, which had to happen, like that, they had to do that. And actually they did it twice, because Azrael, Jean-Paul Valley, took over as Batman during Nightfall, and he defeated Bane. And then they did a story after that, a couple years after that, once Bruce was back as Batman, where he faced off against Bane like one more time. And I don't really remember the details of that, so that must not have been a super memorable story. But after you've done that and you've closed that loop, that should be the last we ever see of Bane. Because the problem with Bane is the same as the problem with Doomsday, or to bring it to Star Trek with the Borg. You establish a villain where part of what makes the villain compelling is that they're the unbeatable villain. That's what makes them compelling. That's what makes them scary, because they've been established as being so good and so strong and so intimidating that they are a credible threat against the hero. So once the hero beats them, that's it. They're done. Or at least they should be, because you've blown it off. To use a wrestling term, you've blown off the feud. You've had the big match The babyface defeated the heel. He climbed the mountain. He walked through fire. He overcame the insurmountable obstacle. He did it. That's it. That bad guy is done. Time to come up with a new bad guy, because you beat that guy. Now he's done. That's my feeling about Bane. Now, again, in adaptations where you're telling a new version of the story that is sort of off in its own little island somewhere that isn't a continuation of something from the comics, I think it's great to use Bane. And I think he should be portrayed in that way, unless you're doing a comedy like the Harley Quinn show does. And I agree with you, Bane and Harley Quinn is brilliant and wonderful. And the Harley Quinn Valentine special is a work of genius. Like, it's so, I laughed so hard watching that Valentine special. And Bane is terrific in it. I cannot recommend it highly enough. The Harley Quinn Valentine's Day special on HBO Max is amazing. It is fantastic. Go watch it right now and laugh your head off if you have not done so yet. It's amazing. But played straight as a serious character, I think you need to present Bane as the unstoppable foe who is smarter than Batman and better than Batman, who beats Batman, who Batman then comes back and defeats in the end. And then that's it. Like, that's how you use Bane. He's the kind of character, he's a great character, he's a great villain, but he needs to be used in a very limited way, because once he expends his energy, he's done. Bane doesn't work if he's just a villain of the week. Bane doesn't work if he's just a guy who shows up in the comics once a year to do the Bane story, and then that's it. Like, he can't be like the Riddler or the Penguin or even the Joker. He can't be a regular member of the rotation. You've got to come in, do your Bane story where he's the man who beats Batman and, does the impossible, does what all the other villains were unable to do, and then ultimately he loses to Batman in the rematch, and that's it. And finally, John Burns. Hey, Steve, drown your sorrows. You know what? Thank you for the prompt, my friend. Want to hear how the economy prevented a mass slaughter? I get the feeling you're going to tell me. In 1763, at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, Generals Wolfe and Montcalm tried to avoid dying in a war neither wanted anything to do with. Both failed, but Wolfe's British troops won the day, and then after throwing French people out of what is present-day North America, they realized that transporting those who were living in modern-day Quebec were too numerous to massacre. Plus, the economy would suffer. I know you're thinking British actors play Nazis. Couldn't they just final solution the French? Oh, poor naive Steve. Did you not read the whole economy would suffer part? Capitalism won the day. Oh, and Acadians went south to become Cajuns, some around New Orleans. So yay, proto-capitalism, as no Adam Smith. Or did you already know about money prevented a massacre? The Acadians could have remained if they swore fealty to the British king. There was swearing, like my history lesson. I do like your history lesson. That is very interesting. But So the army decided not to do a genocide for economic reasons. And instead of being horrified that were it not for economic reasons, the army would have committed a genocide, you have chosen to view it as it's a positive for capitalism. I'm sure that we can think of many other examples throughout history where a genocide was committed, at least in part, because there was an anticipated economic gain, or where it didn't make any difference at all. Like, I'm sure there was somebody in Nazi Germany who said, if we massacre like all of the Jews, that's really going to fuck up our economy, or at least it potentially could. And the Nazis still said, yeah, but we're going to do it anyway. Like, I don't think it's as much of a win for Yes, interpreted the way you interpret it, this one time in history, the profit motive stopped a superior force from genociding an inferior force. Great, cool. It's not necessarily a permanent mark or a mark in favor of capitalism on the whole, because I'm sure there are other situations where they said, we could make a lot more money if we just killed every single motherfucker in that village, and they did it. So, but yes, thank you for the history lesson. That was very interesting. So, okay, now before we get too much further, I will turn to the live chat in just a minute. But first, I would like to share with you a brand new Stuffy short. And again, as I said at the beginning of the stream, this one is really short. It's just how it came out when I wrote it. But I am very pleased with it, and I hope you will find it amusing as well. So please enjoy this brand new Stuffy short, which will be available as a standalone YouTube short tomorrow in square format, but which you all get to see tonight in full 16:9 format. So here we go. Hope you enjoy it. What's your rule for dropping food on the floor?
My rule is to try not to do it.
No, I mean for whether or not you'll eat it.
I don't eat food that's been dropped on the floor.
Really?
Really?
But you're a dog.
Yes, but I'm not an animal.
So there you go. Hope you liked it. Hope it wasn't too short for you. Let me turn now to the live chat for the remainder of the show. Thanks, everybody. Let's see what questions we have. Yes, Kane, Stuffy. I got, I think I mentioned it last time that the previous Stuffy short that I showed on the last Ask Away was the last one of that batch that I had done. So between then and now, I shot 8 more Stuffy shorts, and they're all finished and they're all ready to go. So that was the first one of the new batch. And in 2 weeks at the next Ask Away, I'll debut another one and another one and another one. It'll be great. Stuffy shorts as far as the eye can see. So yeah. Oh, David, I am enjoying our Strange New Worlds Lower Decks blood feud. Yes, I really am. So I'm glad that you continue to show up at my doorstep talking your bullshit about Lower Decks, because I am having a good time. 255 AD with a super chat. Thanks for not being judgmental about my admission. Hey, you were a kid. You're only human. The important thing about that story to me isn't that you took that picture, but what you did afterwards. Obviously, yes, of course, best case scenario, you don't take the picture at all. But the fact is you did it. You made a mistake. You recognized your mistake, and you changed as a result of it. So, I mean, it's a good story. Like I said, I think it reflects well on you. Nobody's perfect. We have all done things that we wish we had not done. And you reacted to it in what I think is a good way. So there you go. Some random geek says, what does that say about me? You mean in the Stuffy short? What does it say about me? That I'll eat food that's been dropped on the floor. I do that short. The title of that short is 5-second rule. That's never actually said in the video, but the title is 5-second rule. So going by that, if it's been on the floor for less than 5 seconds, it's fair game. So, and that is honestly my rule. Yeah. You got to build your immune system somehow. Oh, Maiden Ariana says, I first took your channel as a sci-fi review channel, but I now see it as an overall commentary on life by Steve channel, and I approve. How do you define your own channel, though? I define it as it is very eclectic by design. I don't define it as any one type of channel. It's not this channel. It's a Steve channel. It's, I guess, broadly speaking, it's video essays on a broad range of topics that all interest me or that I feel like I have something to say about, and occasional comedy skits. That's the channel. David Colby says, Year of Hell is infuriating and the Klingon bullshit is annoying, but hands down, the nadir of Star Trek is always going to be Dear Doctor for me. Yeah, I mean, that's not like... It's certainly not a high point for me. Um, I don't think it's as rotten of an episode as other people do, but it's certainly not a high point, you know. Um, Harry Behemoth says, have you been reading the new IDW Star Trek comic series where Cisco pops back into existence and puts together a crew for a special mission, including Data, Crusher, Paris, Scotty, Worf, etc.? I read the first issue and I thought, oh, I'm going to hate this. A few months later, I went back just to be sure and read the second issue. And I said, yeah, I was right. This is not for me. This is not for me at all. Yeah, it is not to my taste. It is not to my taste. Couple more super chats have come in. So 255 AD says, if Section 230 goes away, sites like YouTube and Twitter will have to choose between no moderation and hyper moderation. Which do you think they'll go for? Whichever one they think will preserve their ad revenue. Of the two, I would prefer hyper moderation of the two. But as to which one they will go for, it's whichever one they think will be most profitable. Sam Dermody says, I'm quite a big fan of martial arts, fighting styles, etc. I know you're a fan of pro wrestling. Do you have any favorite styles of wrestling? I really love, I love mat wrestling. I love really technical mat wrestling with reversals and the occasional throw, you know, like a suplex, like Kurt Angle in his prime as a pro wrestler when he's really in the zone, like after he shaved his head around like maybe 2003 or so when Angle was really like, Kurt Angle, right? Maybe 2004 was when he shaved his head. But anyway, Kurt Angle or Bryan Danielson, or I tell you who I really like. He's not so, I mean, he does a lot of grappling, but his offense is really oriented around suplexes and judo throws and stuff. Is in AEW is Hook. I really love Hook. I wish I got to see Hook wrestle more often. Because I really like that style because it's realistic within the realm of pro wrestling. Like nothing in pro wrestling is actually all that realistic, but compared to other styles, it's super realistic and it's visually impressive without going super over the top and becoming outrageous. And it can lead to really good matches. It allows the wrestlers to establish themselves as not only strong and you know good wrestlers but intelligent. You know, they have to have strategy and think their way into and out of things. And yeah, a good strong like grappling style is my favorite, with the occasional strike, you know, the occasional elbow or punch to the face or chop. Again, Kurt Angle, Bryan Danielson, that sort of thing. Samoa Joe, although Samoa Joe is a lot more strike based than grappling based, but he, you know, but I love Samoa Joe too. Super chat from John Burns. You're right, Steve. The British looked at having British dominance over North America meant every Brit will get rich, so no need for genocide. Well, there you go. Radical Bacon. Hey, Steve. Threshold. Threshold's a terrible episode, but I mean, like I say, there are episodes of Voyager that I would rather watch Threshold than watch those. I'll put it that way. Anyway, Kirok 2011 with a member message. Hey, Steve, how are you liking the new Quantum Leap? I'm actually enjoying it. I was disappointed to hear about them possibly canceling it after 2 seasons. I hope not. Like I said, I enjoyed the show so far. Yeah, all I know is that it's been picked up for a second season. I can't imagine they've made any decisions beyond that point since they're not even through the first season yet. So I'm looking forward to the end of the first season, hoping the show continues to improve and hoping that the second season is good. I've been enjoying it too. I thought the most recent episode, Let Them Play, was not their best episode in terms of like writing and drama, but I loved it because it was the kind of like just completely unapologetic, out there, progressive social issue show that the original Quantum Leap used to do and that Star Trek has done throughout its history. And it was about it was about trans rights, a very, very important, very relevant issue that affects people's lives right now. And I thought it was wonderful. So I'm enjoying the news Quantum Leap as well. 255 AD, you don't think hyper moderation will hurt the left too? Well, yeah, it very well may, but so would no moderation. And it's the question of like, which social media site would you rather use? Would you rather be on? One that has no moderation at all, or one that maybe has a little too much moderation? For me, it's easily the one that has maybe a little too much moderation. Yeah. Kirak 2011 says the problem with Year of Hell is the build-up to that two-parter and what Kess had said about the creme, and then the episode. That was disappointing. Yeah. But like I say, I mean, to me, the big problem with it was it's a show where the big problem with the show is lack of continuity, lack of character development, lack of growth and change. And then they do a two-parter that's nothing but that speeds through a whole year of like radical growth and change. And you know all the way through that they're going to have to hit the reset button at the end of it because of just the way the show is. And then that's what they do. And you're just like, why did I watch that? And I promise to those of you who are asking me stuff in the chat, as soon as I get through these super chats, I'm going to go back and catch up on other people's questions. I apologize if I'm spending too much time paying attention to the super chats, but I want to try to get through those. John Byrne says, in your anger, having Q say some wacky line better given to Data, all I could think was George Takei quoting Donald Trump. Oh my. Okay, thanks for sharing. Kirak 2011 says, are there any episodes worse than Turnabout, Intruder, and Code of Honor in any Trek? Maybe Tuvix. No, see, the thing about Tuvix is, as an episode, Tuvix isn't a bad episode. It's the implications of it and the fact that, again, an episode like that takes place in a series where you know it's destined to mean nothing, which is what happens. You know, that episode happens, and then the next episode, it's like it never happened. So, you know, but Tuvix itself is not a bad episode to me. It's definitely a way better episode than Code of Honor or Turnabout Intruder. Super chat from 255 AD. Regardless if they go for the latter, how do you think conservatives will react to finding out hyper moderation is very not good for them? They'll react the same way they react to everything. They'll you know, cry victim and complain about it and try to have it undone, you know, just like they do everything as soon as they find out it doesn't work for them. Okay, so let me see here. Daryl Letts, back a few minutes ago, said, okay, Steve, which celebrity who died either of COVID or symptoms some equate as vaccine complications do you miss the most? I'd have to say I most miss Hank Aaron. Ooh, yeah. Hard not to go with Hammer and Hank especially as a baseball fan. Hammer and Hank is definitely a loss. Yeah. Oh, and Isaiah with the answer to my question about how to get rid of the centipedes. It's going to be a girl from the Forestry Service taking a gas bomb and killing the queen centipede. I like that. That works. That's just fine. Yeah, let's not overthink it. Exactly. Knit and Crochet Tiger, when you were talking about the big bad villain being defeated, the next should be worse than the previous. That's why Supernatural was so great. Each season, the villain was more powerful. Yeah, that's a good point too. Absolutely. David, yes. The comic that's what I didn't like about it. The comic was as fanficky. It was certainly as fanficky as I imagined it. And yes, even more so. It read like fanfic written by a completely undisciplined nerd who thought that they were writing like one of my action figure comics instead of like a serious comic book that people were going to have to pay to read that was trying to actually tell a story that would be engaging. Yeah. I'll tell you the part that really drove the point home for me, and minor spoilers for the ongoing current IDW Star Trek comic for anybody who hasn't read it and wants to. Not spoilers as far as plot, but just in terms of setup. So Captain Sisko comes back from the wormhole. And he gets his new ship for his new secret mission, the Theseus. And the Theseus is a ship that not only is Scotty the chief engineer, because remember, Scotty's now, because of relics and, surviving in the transporter for like 75 years or whatever, Scotty is alive in the era of next gen DS9, etc. So Scotty's still around. Scotty, I guess he never retired. He never made it to the Norpin colony after all. Scotty is not only the chief engineer of the Theseus, but he designed and built it. So that was the point when reading the first issue where I thought, okay, someone in editorial needed to step in and put their hand on this writer's shoulder and say, nerd, calm the fuck down. And that wasn't done. So yeah, it's super fanficky. It's too fanficky for decent company. Yes. Okay, a couple more super chats came in from Kemp. How do you feel about the new Quantum Leap? I just answered that question from Kira. I think it's good so far. It has been improving. I was sort of I never thought it was bad, but I thought, okay, there's potential here, but this isn't really quite good yet for the first several episodes. And then the Halloween episode I thought was very good. And then I think the episode after that I thought was good as well. So it has shown improvement, which is very encouraging. So I'm enjoying it so far. And like I said, the most recent episode with the social issue episode about trans equality, I thought that was great. John Burns with a super chat. Do you remember the movie Ice Pirates? There was the fun threat to the main characters of castration, but in the ancient Chinese Empire, castration was a way of getting ahead on the empire. Snip? I have never seen that, but thank you for the delightful summary. Yeah, Kara, there was another solution to Tuvix. I think I've talked about that before. One of the possible solutions would be for Tuvix to decide for himself to undergo the separation. That would be one way to handle it. Another way to handle it would be to just have the consequences of the split be carried through to future episodes. Just make it matter, make it something that mattered to the characters that happened. Emma, I am not going to go to the theater to see the new Ant-Man. No. But I mean, I'll certainly watch it as soon as it comes out on Disney Plus, but no, I have no plans to go see it in the theater. Missy says, hey, Steve, I tell people I have 3 addictions: caffeine, nicotine, and Star Trek. What are yours? Well, caffeine would be one of mine. I'm a big coffee drinker. So caffeine, I don't know if I'd call Star Trek an addiction. I mean, I do really like it and I watch a lot of it, but I don't know if I don't know if I could call it an addiction. Probably pro wrestling, watching wrestling. So caffeine, pro wrestling, and what's the third one? I don't know. I'll have to get back to you. Oh, peanut butter. Peanut butter, especially peanut butter sandwiches. God damn it. Yeah, Carrie Hughes, no, someone needed to turn to the writer and say, and these comics will sell? I don't know how well it's selling, but yeah. 255 AD asks, what if YouTube adopts a policy that prevents YouTubers from being left-wing news or video essayists? I honestly don't think that's implausible. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they would explicitly say, I don't think they'd be allowed to explicitly say, we are forbidding you to put on left-wing views, but they could arrange, requirements or standards in such a way that it would drastically discourage that sort of thing. I mean, that would be too bad. That would be very unfortunate. David Colby says, it's funny how intensely we disagree on Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, considering how much we think alike when it comes to how new stories in Star Trek should be written. I know, isn't that weird? And you know what's odd about it too is that in their own very different ways, Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks are both examples of something that I think we both tend to dislike, which is reusing characters. And granted, the main cast of Lower Decks is all original characters, but it traffics very heavily in bringing in legacy characters for cameos and little, one-off references and stuff. Whereas Strange New Worlds has several legacy characters like in its regular cast. But either way, like for me personally, and I think based on our discussions, like for you too, using legacy characters in a new show for a long-running franchise like that is something that I would say is best avoided. And yet both of those shows do that, albeit in different ways, and they are our favorite shows in the franchise. So I think that's interesting. Of their favorite shows of the new generation of the franchise. So I think that's interesting. Well, Kirak 2011, not even necessarily keeping Tuvix. They could have gotten rid of Tuvix at the end, but again, either have Tuvix choose to split himself back into Tuvok and Neelix of his own accord, or just do the episode exactly the way they did it. Have Janeway split them apart against the will of Tuvix so that Tuvok and Neelix are back, but then have that decision have consequences that echoed through the rest of the series instead of just acting the next episode like it never happened. Lord Cyber Ram says, "Hi, Steve. What are you thinking of the idea that Star Wars might be doing the trilogy of the Knights of the Old Republic in film form? I think it's a good idea. The Sith Empire and Jedi 1,000 years before." I mean, I am not familiar with that. I know those were comics and video games, I think, Knights of the Old Republic. I'm not familiar with it, so I don't have any pre-existing investment in it. So I don't really have a dog in that fight. Radical Bacon asks, Steve, have you ever wanted to wrestle yourself? No, not seriously. I don't think I have the physical aptitude for it, and I don't think I ever did. I mean, I definitely don't now at age almost 43. So, I mean, I even if I had wanted to, I have missed my window. I'm not going to learn to start taking bumps right now. No, I never seriously considered it, and I don't think I would have been good at it. I think I might have been okay as like a commentator or a manager. Like I would be, or at least I think I have the potential to be a good talker in the pro wrestling sphere, but actually as a wrestler, getting in the ring and wrestling, I don't think I have the physical aptitude for it. 255 AD. No, I would not be fine with that happening to YouTube. I would be very distressed if that happened to YouTube. Yeah. And Kara makes a good point. There wasn't that much fallout in any of the Trek series. Well, I would say Deep Space Nine was pretty good at that. But the thing, because when I make that criticism of Voyager and I say like the episodes don't have consequences, a lot of people who like Voyager more than I do will come back at me and say, well, what about TNG? And to be fair, TNG was very much the same way. Very, very, very episodic, and the events of one episode, for the most part, did not affect events of subsequent episodes. But the difference, what TNG had that Voyager didn't have, was TNG had very strong, clearly drawn characters. The characters in TNG were not very dynamic. They didn't change all that much, if at all, throughout the run of the show. But at least by around season 3, you knew who everybody was. You had a clear sense of those characters and their personalities and what they would and wouldn't do in given situations. You knew enough about them to have expectations in your mind that the writers could then play with and either fulfill or defy. And with Voyager, the characters just never felt that strongly drawn to me. So TNG had that advantage, which I think makes it much more watchable and much more compelling than Voyager was. Here's another super chat from Kirak 2011. I don't know. Tuvix was a fun character, and it would have been a risk to eliminate 2 cast members, especially early on. I think that would have paid off. I mean, I like Tuvix as a character, but I think it would have been, I think the right move was bringing back Tuvok and Neelix. It's just a matter of how they did it. David Colby, I did not see that coming. That Picard season 2 is your favorite. I still don't see that coming. Oh, Isaiah, the centipedes are just normal size. So they kind of swarm people to eat their flesh. Oh, Michael says, RE addiction. How well would you cope if you found out you could never watch Star Trek again ever? I mean, it would be a blow at first because I do really like Star Trek, obviously. I mean, I'm a big Star Trek fan, so it would take some getting used to, but I mean, life would go on. It wouldn't be devastating. Like there's other stuff to watch. It would be a bummer because I mean, I really like Star Trek a lot, and not being able to ever watch it again would, but I would be okay. I'd get over it. Panda Head Studio says, in your most recent episode, DS9's most problematic episode, do you think some of the problems you pointed out might have been the point? For example, all the men telling him how to be the perfect woman. Possibly. I mean, I guess we could give them the benefit of the doubt and say that that was part of the intended point of the episode. And maybe it was, but I mean, that's a pretty smart, take. And the rest of the episode doesn't seem all that smart to me. So I don't know. David Colby, I need you to go no at the idea of them adapting Knights of the Old Republic for me because I can't do it. Okay. What's that? They're adapting Knights of the Old Republic. No! How's that? Is that okay? Does that give you what you need? You lower decks loving mother. 225 AD with a super chat. Worried 230 SCOTUS ruling might be killing my channel. That's not a fear I have right now, but I mean, I suppose anything is possible. Yeah, Kara, I had the same thought when Radical Bacon said, have you ever wanted to wrestle yourself? I for a second, I thought about making that joke, but I didn't do it. I don't know if I would ever have described it as wrestling myself. I would have gone filthy, not clone joke. I would have done masturbation joke. I wouldn't have done clone joke. I wouldn't describe it as wrestling myself, or at least not. I suppose you could say there was some grappling involved. Yeah. Radical Bacon, hey Steve, I ordered something from Amazon and it still says it's arriving today before 10 p.m., but it hasn't even shipped. What do? Look for it tomorrow, maybe. I don't know. You know what happened to me once? This has only happened to me once. I will say this. As evil as Amazon is, in general as a company, for the most part, their service has been pretty good when I've used it. But not earlier this year, last year now, several months ago, I ordered something from Amazon and I got a notification that it had been delivered, and I went out and I went out on my front porch and looked for it. There was nothing there. I walked around the house to see if somehow it had been dropped off somewhere where it wasn't normally left. Nowhere. Front porch, back porch, side door. Package was not there. Said it had been delivered, wasn't there. I thought maybe somebody stole it, but I wouldn't expect that. But maybe. The next day it showed up. So I have no idea what happened. I have no idea why it was marked delivered a day ahead of time. But yeah, so it's sort of the opposite of the problem you're having. Kemp Chalmers, choking yourself. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Putting myself in a sleeper hold, although hopefully not. John Burns with a super chat. What about a wrestling match between Stuffy and the masked Stuff Nero? A Stuffy, a luchador version of Stuffy. A Stuffador. A lucha stuff. Sorry, Steve. More Darth Vader like, no! Like something like that. I don't know.
I can't really do a very good Darth Vader. No!
Something like that. I don't know. Okay. Kane 20C, deathmatch time, topical edition. Ant-Man versus Adam. Ooh. I'm not super familiar with either character, to be honest, but when in doubt, I default to being a DC guy. So I would have to save Adam and kill Ant-Man, unfortunately. Ah, thank you, Michael. Vader's nose should have been more Steve-like. See, now I see who my friends really are. Lord Cyberramp, Steve, are Captain Kirk and Spock gay coded? They seem to be very close. I do not think they are gay coded intentionally. No, I don't think that has ever been the intention for those characters. I do think it's all open to interpretation. They can be read that way and are read that way by, many people. But I do not read them that way. And I do not see them as anything other than, like very close platonic friends, like brothers from another mother type thing. But other people interpret them as being gay coded, and I don't think there's anything invalid about that. But I do not think that is the intention, and it's not how I see it. David Colby, that sounded like Stuffy trying to do a Darth Vader. Apparently, all of my impressions sound like Stuffy, which I think is kind of funny. Oh, and see, Kara says it's more like Picard. Interesting. Harry Behemoth says, like me, do you find it mildly offensive from a writing standpoint that Jean-Luc Picard has somehow gained Jim Kirk's reputation as a loosey-goosey rule breaker? No, not really. I mean, because like Kirk was, if you actually watch the original series, Kirk isn't that much of a rule breaker either. I mean, that's just kind of a reputation he has acquired over the years. He's kind of been caricatured as that. And like, if anything, Picard, if you in TNG, he's actually less of an uptight guy than his reputation suggests. Like, I don't think either of them would actually qualify based on what we see of them in the shows as loosey-goosey rule breakers. I think Kirk is actually less of one than his reputation suggests, and Picard is maybe just a tiny bit more of one than his reputation suggests. But neither one of them, I would say, is actually like that. Ah, the centipede swarm, Isaiah. Yeah, I see. That's a good visual. I can see that. That's creepy. That's creepy as hell. Yes. No, CeeLo 626. I don't think mock time comes across as, again, like I said, people interpret it that way, and that's completely fine. I don't think it needs to. I don't find a mock time to be all that homoerotic. I know that it's like sort of the episode that birthed the whole, spurk phenomenon. And it's not like it's not like I can't see it, but when I watch that episode, I don't think, oh, those two guys are totally gay for each other. I just don't see that. I see two guys who care about each other very much and are obviously friends and, have a lot of feeling for each other, maybe even have some actual love for each other, but it's not necessarily like a romantic attraction. Kemp Chalmers asks, are there gay Vulcans? I presume there are. I don't see why there wouldn't be. Ooh, David Colby. You know who I kind of wish got a rewrite? Shinzon. The concept of Picard's clone rising to the head of a galactic empire is pretty neat. Shame the movie was, Nemesis. Yeah, there's no reason why Shinzon couldn't have been a good character. I agree. Steve Schmeling says, saw your review of your fave TOS app. Mine might be Charlie X. I especially like how every time he uses his powers, he looks like he had a stroke mid-orgasm. Charlie X is a great episode. I agree. I love Charlie X. Super chat from All Mod Cons. There's a Stuffy video in which Jack and TB discuss a theory that Jessica Fletcher was the killer on Murder, She Wrote. It's hilarious. Would you mind telling it now? Well, I didn't come up with that. I saw that online somewhere. That's apparently a fairly popular fan theory for Murder, She Wrote, that the actual murderer in every episode of Murder, She Wrote is in fact not the person that Jessica identifies, but Jessica herself. That Jessica Fletcher is actually the person who is killing everybody in the show. And she's basically the most prolific serial killer in history. And she escapes suspicion by convincingly solving the murders and fingering, someone else to take the fall. That's basically the idea. And someone saw, I don't know if it was on Twitter or if it was a Tumblr post that somebody showed me a screenshot of or something, but somebody came up with the idea of a rewrite of the final episode of Murder, She Wrote, or an additional scene in the final episode of Murder, She Wrote, where after the story has finished, we're left kind of lingering alone with Jessica in her house. And once everybody else is gone, Jessica goes, slides open a wall panel and steps into a never before seen hidden room in her house where she has kept mementos of all of the crimes that she solved throughout the 12 years of the show, but that as the scene goes on, we come to realize these are actually her serial killer mementos, and these are things that she has taken with her, that indicate that actually she was the killer of all these people. And that should have been the end of the series. And I think that's just a hilarious idea. So yeah. Oh, Bright and Shiny with a super chat. Thank you very much. Says, ever considered doing a what if series on Trek? I've done videos like that. I've never done like, I would never want to do like an entire series of just nothing but what if videos, but I do. Several of the Trek Actually videos have been what if topics, and they've been some of my favorite ones. And they're a lot of fun to write, and they're a challenge to do, both for making it work in the format of a Trek Reluctantly video, the way I tend to do them with the screenshots illustrating my points and episode recaps and stuff. And also just to try and approach it as a writer and say, if I were writing this show at this time and I chose to take it in this direction instead of the direction it actually went, like, how would I do it to make it a good episode? So they're a lot of fun, and I certainly will do more in the future. Yeah, I like doing the what if episodes. Kirak 2011 says, Nemesis would have been a better film had they used Sela instead of a clone or Picard. Also, we lost Austin Majors, aka Theo, way too young, 27 RIPS. Austin Majors, who played Andy Sipowitz's son, Theo, which you mentioned on Trek Reluctantly this week as well. So thank you for bringing it up here as well. And that is a terrible shame. Very young. I don't see how Nemesis would have been better if they had used Sela. Like, I like Sela as a character, and I talk about her a little bit in this week's in the video that I put up this past Wednesday about Picard's nemesis. I think Sela was a good character, but I think we saw enough of her. Like, I don't really think she was crying out for another appearance, and I really don't see how Nemesis would have automatically been better if she had been the villain instead of Shinzon. And John Burns would like to remind us that Dark Matter is on the CW and iTunes and Canadian Netflix. So there you go, if anybody wants to watch Dark Matter. Yes, Kara, exactly. If you're Jessica's friend, you're fine. Yeah, unless you're the friend that she's visiting in just that episode, because you might be the one who dies. It depends. Some of the episodes were like that, where Jessica's friend was the one who died. Hard to tell. Yeah, Harry Behemoth. Poker Face is excellent. I have really enjoyed Poker Face so far. My one quibble with Poker Face, and it is not to do with the show itself at all. It's to do with the way it has been marketed, because Poker Face has been marketed as a murder mystery, and technically, and this is as close as hopefully I ever get to being pedantic, but technically it's not a murder mystery. It's a procedural, because the way the episodes of Poker Face are structured, we see the murder and we know who the culprit is before Charlie becomes involved. Like, we already know the solution to the mystery before Charlie even knows there's a mystery. The joy of the show is we see the we see the murder, we see the circumstances like immediately leading up to the murder, and then we back up and we see what Charlie's involvement is in it, and we see some of the circumstances from a little bit further back maybe that led to the murder, and then we get to watch Charlie figure it out. And the interest in the show is, how does she figure it out? Like, we already know what the solution is, but watching her figure it out so far has been very entertaining. And I think it's been a really good show so far. I have enjoyed it thoroughly. Tony Bowling says, my favorite TOS episode was Balance of Terror. I almost had a mild stroke when Pike was pushed to the wedding scene. Probably my second favorite moment in Trek history. Balance of Terror is a great episode. Balance of Terror is a great episode for sure. Lord Cyberram says, Steve, what do you think of the Lord Dracon character that KDF, aka Tommy Oliver, became? Your thoughts? I take it that's a Power Rangers reference, but I don't really get it. That must have been after I stopped watching the show. Well, Kirk, she was a recurring villain. I didn't necessarily expect her to have a conclusion. I mean, she was a recurring villain. She showed up in a couple episodes of TNG. Like not every recurring character got, a sort of complete circle farewell. Yeah, Wolfie, exactly. That was one of my what if videos. What if they had never rescued Picard from the Borg? Yeah, that was a lot of fun to sort of project from season 4 onward of TNG. What if Riker had been the captain for the second half of that series and not Picard? And, how would certain episodes have changed? I sort of had to figure out, like, okay, what if they did the Inner Light, but it was a Riker episode instead of a Picard episode, and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fun to speculate and to try and do it in a half-assed sort of writerly way. And again, think like, okay, if I was given the assignment to write this episode and it was a Riker episode and not a Picard episode, like, how would I write it? It's a lot of fun. Yeah, Kara, exactly. If you're Jessica's friend who's been accused of murder, then you're okay. If you're an acquaintance, then yeah. David Colby, Strange New Worlds treatment of Balance of Terror gave me a stroke in a bad way. Yes, I know you didn't like that one. Rick Sanchez, no, I didn't make. No, I think I thought I made it quite clear the last time I addressed this, which was on this live stream, and then I posted it as a separate video. No, I think he's a piece of shit. And no, I haven't made up with him, nor do I have any intention of ever doing that, because he's a piece of shit. Isaiah, the centipedes are attracted to human scent and loud noises, and they also attack other animals. Yeah, I think this has the potential to be a really cool and really gross and creepy, like, horror movie creature feature. I really like. I'm thinking of the visuals. I'm thinking of how gross and unsettling it would be to people to see just like swarms of centipedes like crawling all over people and animals. And I mean that's gross. That's like that would trigger like a really instinctive revulsion response in a lot of people. Like that's oh, you got something there, kid. Kurak 2011 says, I honestly have to say Corbomite Maneuver is my favorite TOS episode. And with Sela, I wanted an ending for her. Oh, well, and if Sela was there would have been no mind rape scene, which, I don't know. Well, they could have, they could have just not written that mind rape scene anyway. That shouldn't have been there no matter who the villain was. But yeah, Corbomite Maneuver is a great episode. Yeah. And I think I've talked about it before. Corbomite Maneuver is like, it's sort of an interesting window into the show that TOS might have been. because it was, I think maybe it might have been the first episode that they shot after the second pilot, maybe. Or it was it was shot very, very early in the production run of season 1. And it's just a little off from the tone of the rest of the season. You know, it's a little stiffer, it's a little more serious. The character interactions are a little more formal, like you might expect on like a Navy ship or a submarine. Um, just the tone is a little straighter, you know, a little more serious. And it works. Like, I don't know if it would have worked for the entire series, but it's an interesting what if, you know. Not only is it a good episode in its own right, it's terrific, but it's like, ooh, you know, like this might have been the tone of the whole show if they hadn't continued to make refinements and adjustments as they went along. um Superb, are you and Jason doing a Picard review? Yes, we are planning to do it tomorrow. That is why I have not yet watched the first episode of season 3. Jason and I are planning to get together on a Zoom call tomorrow at some point. I'm not sure exactly when. I'll have to, you know, text him or call him or something and say, hey, when are we doing this? Because I'm on the East Coast and he's on the West Coast. But we're going to get together at some point online tomorrow and watch the episode. We will both watch the episode together for the first time, and then we're going to record our review. So it will be recorded tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll be able to edit it and release it tomorrow because I would like to get that out as soon as possible. But yes, Jason and I are reviewing season 3 of Picard together, and the plan is that we will be watching the episodes together and then reviewing them on Saturdays. So we'll see how that holds up. Hopefully that is the pattern for the season. Yeah. Yeah, Kirok, that's what I thought, that it was the first episode after the second pilot. Yeah. It's just me says, what is my most prized Star Trek piece of memorabilia? I mean, I don't have anything of any value. Like, I don't really collect things that have monetary value. My most prized piece of Star Trek memorabilia, I don't know. I mean, I like my dolls back there that I used to make my comics. Those are all pretty cool. My little ships, you know, that are in front of my fake monitor back there that you can see in the Trek Actually. I don't ever have any. I don't know if I would say I have I prize any of it. I mean, I like them all, but there's nothing I have of any real value, and nothing of any like specific sentimental value. Like if I lost one of them, I could replace it. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I really have anything like that. CLO 62, yeah, maybe Framed Riker, yeah, yeah, because that was actually a gift. That was actually a Christmas gift from my now ex-wife. So that, yeah, maybe Framed Riker. Yeah, because it was like even though the marriage didn't work out, like it's still a sentimental gift, and I you know, I was very glad to receive it, and you know what it represents. So yeah, maybe Framed Riker. Good catch. God, you knew that, and I didn't even know it. Shit, or you know, didn't think of it. Yes, David, exactly. The most prized memorabilia is the friends I made along the way. Exactly. Exactly. Daryl says, is there a sci-fi author you wouldn't touch their novels with the proverbial 10-foot pole? I like sci-fi, but for obvious reasons, I eschew any fiction by L. Ron Hubbard. I'll go with you on that. Yeah, I have not even the remotest interest in reading anything by L. Ron Hubbard. Not just because he's a cult leader or was a cult leader, but also, from what I understand, he was just a lousy writer. Like, there's not even really a part of me that's like, I wonder if maybe he's a good, like, I've never heard anyone who was not a Scientologist say anything positive about L. Ron Hubbard's writing. So, yeah. Oh, it's just me. That's cool. Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise, signed by James Doohan. That's cool. Yeah, yeah. I don't have anything like that. Yeah, and Tony, I agree with you. Tony Bowling says the less formal tone allowed TOS to be more than a sci-fi show. It's a relationship show, and that's why we've been talking about it for almost 60 years. I agree with you. I agree with you. I do think, I mean, like I said, I'm not sure. I think I've said this before when talking about Corbomite Maneuver. As good of an episode as it is, I'm not sure if the entire series had kept that same tone. I'm not sure that we would still be talking about it today. Um, Again, to take nothing away from that episode because it's a fine episode, but yeah, having a looser rapport with the actors and the crew, um, focusing it on especially the relationship between the main three, between Kirk and Spock and McCoy, um, and their interaction and their sort of butting heads, but also being friends. Like I do think that ended up being the heart of the show. Um, and I think that was really, really important. David Colby says, I won't say for Hubbard, but the scene in Battlefield Earth where Turl is sentenced to work on Earth for another 50 cycles with endless options for renewal is a work of art. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's just me. So you're like a collector. You have some of these things. The stupidest, cutest thing would be a 4x4 Band-Aid package signed by Gates McFadden. Well, that's clever. That's clever. I like that. You get the actor who played the doctor on TNG to sign some Band-Aids. That's outside the box thinking. Anybody could bring her like a headshot or an action figure or something like that, or like a prop, like a medical tricorder. No, you box of Band-Aids. That's perfect. That's fantastic. Okay, it is getting on to the time when I am usually going to end the show. So I'm going to go ahead and do my wrap up, and then we can take the last couple of minutes to answer any final questions that you might have. So I'm going to just take the live chat off of the screen here for just a few minutes, and then I'll come back to it for the final few questions. So if you have any more final questions, get them in the chat, and I'll try to catch up to them before we end the show. So thank you everybody for joining me. As always, I really, really, really appreciate it. I love you guys and gals and NB folks, whatever you happen to be. I appreciate your support and your attention and hanging out with you tonight. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives or becoming a channel member by clicking the join button. One of the benefits of both members and patrons is that you can submit questions ahead of time for the Ask Away live stream. So if that's something that you think you'd want to do, or if you don't give a shit about that, but you would just like to support this channel and help me continue making videos, for $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever you can afford, whatever you think I'm worth, patreon.com/Steve Shives or become a channel member. Also, don't forget charitylinks.page that is linked in the description where you can help out some friends of ours who need a helping hand. Some random geek maintains that Google Doc with links to PayPal accounts and GoFundMe pages and stuff like that for people who need a helping hand, who need a little help paying the bills or whatever their situation may be. So please consider making use of that as a resource and helping people if you're able to as well. Also, don't forget, if you enjoy what I do here on YouTube, and especially if you enjoy the Star Trek themed stuff that I do, you may enjoy the podcasts that I am on, including Late Seating, which is the movie review podcast that I co-host along with Jason Harding, where we look at classic movies and see if they deserve their reputation, be it good or bad. The newest episode of Late Seating just went up this week, and it is our review of the classic 1995 family movie Babe. You can listen to our review of Babe right now, and you can also listen to the Ensign's Log, which is the other podcast I'm on alongside Jason and also Dana Cole, who is not with us. Usually Dana is with us in the chat during Ask Away, but she is actually out volunteering at one of her local community theaters, acting as an usher tonight for one of their shows, which is very cool, and hopefully Dana's having a good time. But Dana and Jason and I are all on the Ensign's Log together. It is a Star Trek themed improv comedy podcast. We have a blast doing it. And hopefully, if you listen to it, you enjoy listening to the Ensign's Log as much as we enjoy making it, which is a hell of a lot. Links to both of those shows are in the description down below, where they can also be found at the address on your screen at this moment, although it'll be gone in a second. There it goes. So, yeah, hope you give a listen to our podcasts. And now, right before we wrap it up, let me go back to the live chat and catch some final questions. Let me see. Dan Sullivan says, do you find that the Blu-ray releases of the 90s shows are harder to watch? The Red Later Media guys pointed out that you can see the control panel shaking when the actors press them. Immersion dead. That kind of thing does not bother me at all. So no, that kind of thing doesn't bother me at all. The package still hasn't shipped. Oh, Radical Bacon, I'm so sorry. Kirk 2011, one last. Who's your favorite Star Trek doctor? Dr. McCoy. Hands down, Dr. McCoy. Kara says, great to be here, Steve. See you and Dana on the 22nd. All right. Yes, for our next watch of Poirot. And I'll think about joining. $1 is not that much. See you soon. Well, thanks, Kara. I really appreciate that. Thank you for at least thinking about it, even whether you decide to become a patron or a member or not. I appreciate the thought. Kirak 2011, am I going to be on this Sunday? No, it's next Sunday. It's this Sunday is the 19th, so there's still one more Sunday in the month. So it's the last Sunday of the month that I'm on for the patron and members hangout. And let me see a few more here. Oh, thank you. It's just me saying that I'm more entertaining than just about any of the other Star Trek channels. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much. And I like a lot of those other channels, but thank you for saying that. John Burns with a super chat. The Galileo 7, a black dude criticizing Spock. Yes. And just a great episode in general. And yeah, there's Dan with his super chat for the question I answered already. Sorry, you could have saved $5, but I appreciate it, Dan. Yeah, the losing immersion does. I don't care. No, seeing the panel shake and stuff, like, I'm already well aware that I'm watching a fake TV show. It doesn't bother me. That's okay. Yeah, I appreciate the tip, Dan. I appreciate the tip, Dan. Kane 20C, what's for dinner? I have like some frozen, like, protein vegetable mixes. I'm going to fry up one of those with maybe a couple eggs. That'll be dinner. Yeah. Tomorrow is cheat day. I have not decided what I will have for dinner for cheat day. I'm vegetarian during the week and on Sunday, but on Saturday it's cheat day, where I allow myself to just eat whatever I want. So I haven't decided yet. Oh, thank you, Kara. Well, that's very sweet. That's awesome. I look forward to you, whichever one you decide to do, whether you hit the join button and become a member or you become a patron. Either one is fine with me. But I appreciate the support from you and from everybody who has become a supporter in whatever way they have done it. I literally could not do this without you all. So I appreciate you, and I thank you for your support. And one last one from John. I had a great interaction with Robin Curtis. We talked Star Trek 3, plus I knew she was in an Equalizer episode. Yeah, she was in a bunch of TV in the 80s. She was in a MacGyver too. I'm glad you had a cool interaction with her. She always seemed like a cool person. So I've never met her, but that's awesome. Good for you. And on that note, I will call the proceedings to a close. Thank you all. Oh, hey, there's Kara. She just joined the 99-cent store level of the of the channel membership. That's a good note to end on. Thank you, Kara, very much, and welcome to membership. I hope you will find it to your liking. I really, really appreciate your support, and I appreciate you, just being here and watching and hanging out and anything, and as I do everybody else. Radical Bacon. Fry a pound of bacon, then use the bacon fat to make cookies. Good idea. Oh, thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Take care.